president of SPJ Georgia, and I work at the AJC, but I work in the WSB building, so I always feel disconnected when I come over here. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. Kevin Riley is the editor of the AJC. He will be our moderator today. And Larry is our committee person who did much of the hard work putting this all together. So if anybody deserves thanks, Larry deserves thanks.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys get started when you're ready.
Why don't we just start? I've already been introduced as the editor of the AJC, and I just tell people, yes, it is actually all my fault. So whenever if you didn't get your paper this morning, it's all really, just let me know. But we'll just start with our panelists. I've asked them to give themselves a pretty thorough introduction so we can really understand why they're here and what we can ask them about.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edward Ahmed Mitchell. I'm a civil rights attorney here in Atlanta, and I'm the director of CARE Georgia, which is the Georgia chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations. As you may know, CARE is our nation's largest Muslim civil rights organization. What the NAACP does for African Americans, what the Anti-Defamation League does for Jewish Americans, CARE does for American Muslims. Our main focus is fighting anti-Muslim discrimination. As for me, I grew up here in Georgia for the most part. I went to Morehouse College. Undergrad, I went to Georgetown University for law school. I came back home right afterwards. I actually had the pleasure of serving as an intern at the AJC years ago. I guess it was 5 years ago, and I had a great time.
He went on to an honest living.
Yeah, it's nice to be back in the building. It's an honor and a pleasure. And in college, I was the editor of my college newspaper. In law school, I was the editor of my law school newspaper. So journalism was always an interest of mine. Obviously, the legal career ended up hooking me in, and I became a prosecutor. I served as a criminal prosecutor in Atlanta for 3 years before I got a call from this guy suggesting that I join CARE. And after much kicking and screaming and praying, I decided to accept that offer, and I joined CARE almost exactly a year ago. And it's been a whirlwind. I mean, from dealing with the situation in Newton County, to Muhammad Ali passing away, to the Orlando massacre, to President Trump, ISIS, just to all the other local things that happen here. It's been a very busy year for the Muslim community, and obviously for journalists, as always. As for why I thought this is important, I interact with reporters quite a bit, but it's usually only in the context of a breaking news event. Muslims are either the victims of a hate crime or the perpetrator of a terrorist attack. And that doesn't give a lot of time for dialogue with journalists, and it doesn't give them a lot of time to dialogue with us. And so my hope is that the journalists in the room can ask any questions they may have that they don't get to ask in that kind of hurried environment, and that we can maybe express some of the things that we see in the media, things that could be important to you that we know, and just have a conversation so that the next time we have an event, a breaking news event, there's an educational background there that will make the story easier for you to cover, and that we'll have a better understanding of how to interact with journalists here in the state of Georgia. So thank you for coming, and thank you for Kevin and SPJ for setting this up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Shuaib Hanif. Just wanted to thank again Larry and Kevin and SPJ and Ellen for hosting this event. And especially thank you for all of you for being here on a weekend. I know it takes a lot, so I appreciate it. So I am a founder of AtlantaMuslim.com. It's the largest Muslim publication that we have in Atlanta, and it's all been handled by the volunteers. So it's like sort of like a Huffington Post idea of getting people the opportunity to convey their own personal opinions and thoughts. We started that about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been fairly successful. We get about 20,000 visitors, approximately a month, unique visitors. And professionally, I'm an engineer. I did my undergrad and graduated in Huntsville, Alabama, and then I moved here for a PhD at Georgia Tech. I dropped out to study nonprofits at Georgia State University. I did my MPA there, and I work with quite a few nonprofit organizations and serve on the board as advisor capacity, and also governance side.
Thank you so much, Shuaib and Edward. Thank you so much, Kevin and Larry and Ellen and everybody who put this together. My name is Noor Abadi, and I am here today actually in place of Sumaya Khalifa, who's not feeling so well this weekend. If you can keep her and her family in your prayers. I am the operations manager of the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Atlanta. And I have been a certified public speaker with the Islamic Speakers Bureau for about 9 years now. So I delivered tens and tens of presentations and seminars and workshops to educate and promote education and building bridges of understanding between Muslims and people of other faiths. I also now am the program manager with the Interfaith Speakers Network, where we do not only provide Muslim speakers to educate, but we also provide certified speakers from the 6 major world religions to educate about their respective religions. Professionally, I'm an educator. I'm an ESL instructor in different technical colleges in Atlanta. And I also work with Educational Testing Service, which is the largest place-based test organization in the nation. And we are here today to hopefully offer a perspective and offer a source whenever you need it, to kind of try to shift and change the narrative of how Muslims, as Edward mentioned, are viewed in the media, either as a perpetrator or as a victim. And really, Muslims have a lot more to offer than these two things. So that's why we're here today. Thank you.
So we're lucky because we don't have a great big room, and I would like to just say that I'm hoping this can be as intimate and personal a discussion as possible. I mean, I'm moderator of the panel, but that is just a very small role compared to the one you have, ask, interrupt, you know. And I really encourage you, depending on your perspectives, whether as a journalist or as a Muslim or both, to ask the things you really want to know that maybe might be hard to ask at times, or if you've got a question in your mind that you're afraid might not come out right. Let's just agree that we'll let people do that in this room, and we will help each other along so that when we leave this morning, we'll have a deeper understanding. That's the risk we all need to take, and one that I was fortunate to take with Sumaya Khalifa, who is a close friend of mine now. And I would emphasize that the Islamic Speakers Bureau, which several of us here at the AJC have become familiar with, is a great resource for any question, any time about anything, as we work certainly as journalists, but I just think members of this community to better understand things. So I'm going to kick off a question for the panel to get them talking and get their guard down a little bit too. And my question is a simple one. I would like each of you to pick something that you wish people in Metro Atlanta do, as a Muslim in this community. Big thing, small thing, personal thing. But if you could just get all of Metro Atlanta's attention for one moment, what would you say as a Muslim that you would just want them to know? Anyone who wants to start, go ahead.
I was going to say, did you know that 1 out of 12 or 13, forgive me for the exact number, 1 out of 12 or 13 doctors and healthcare providers in the United States is actually a Muslim. And if Muslims were to leave the United States, there's going to be a healthcare crisis. That's what I would like you to know. Yes.
Please.
About 12, 13 years ago, I went to India to visit my family. It's been a long time, and I met with one of my uncles. He's one of those gregarious people that you love to talk to and slap on the back, laughter kind of a thing. So while we were having dinner one day, he says, "So, do you guys?" Here's something along the lines of, "How's your horse?" Or something, right? I said, "What do you mean, my horse?" He said, "Well, isn't that how you guys travel?" I'm thinking, like, what in blazes are you talking about? Like, we don't travel on horses. And he says, where did you get this from? Like, well, I watched this movie. He apparently watched a Western that he happened to get that information. And I'm thinking, well, that doesn't represent the country I live and been there. So obviously, when you guys are thinking this, right, you're thinking, what an imbecile type comment, right, to say that you're coming in on a horse. Now, what happens is that I'm sitting there, and right now, and this thought came to mind about how his impression of an entire country was formed through this one movie, right? And at the same time, one of the frustrations that I deal with is how is it that 1.2 or 1.6 billion people's vision of who they are has been framed by a handful of people that have forcefully taken the mic and says, this is what Muslims are, right? And so that's the way I feel. And it's one of those things where you really have to wonder who has the microphone and how has the vision been conveyed to people. So that's the
Thank you.
For me, what I like to stress when I speak to interfaith groups, whether that's a church group, the Tea Party, whoever I go and speak to, I like to emphasize that the Muslim community is far more diverse than you think. Because I think there's a stereotype people have that Muslims all have turbans with thobes and the big beards and we're all Arab. Obviously, it's not the case. And even people who don't think that, I think, are still under the misimpression, well, that's still the majority. Maybe not all, but that's the majority. And if you look at the American Muslim population, here in Georgia and around the country, we're the most ethnically diverse religious group in the country. And that's because we have a mix of converts to the religion, African Americans, and immigrants from overseas and their children, which creates a very diverse environment. So I like to emphasize that to people whenever I talk about Muslims and Islam, because it immediately breaks down that first misconception they have in their mind. And the thing I really like to emphasize when talking about that is that women play a major role in the Georgia Muslim community. Noor is just one example of that. Sumaya, founder of the Islamic Speakers Bureau, just one example of that. My staff at CARE Georgia, our communications director is a woman, our outreach director is a woman. I think most of our board members, at least several, are women. At the mosque I go to, which is a very traditional conservative mosque, our founder is a woman, our current chairman is a woman, our chairman 2 people before that was a woman, and that is not unique. You'll find women play a very prominent role in American Muslim life, but especially in the Georgia Muslim life. And I think those 2 bits of information, that we are a very ethnically and racially diverse population, and that women do indeed play a major role in leading our community. I like to emphasize that because that immediately can start breaking down some misconceptions and then open people up to the question of, oh, what else do I not know? Or what else do I think I know about Muslims that is wrong?